I hope you are having a lovely day today. Today's video is going to be how to respond or react when you get asked this question, because if you are a full-time homemaker, you are bound to get asked this question, as you've seen in the title of this video. But first, I am pouring myself a cup of tea. So today's brew is just rooibos. I like my rooibos just by itself. It is caffeine free. When Scott makes it, which I also like it that way, when Scott makes it, he makes it with honey and milk, and it's also very delicious that way as well. If you like rooibos, we do bring rooibos in from South Africa. It's the only country that it is grown in, and that is where my husband is from. And we get the most delicious organic red and green rooibos. It's naturally caffeine free and has a lot of health benefits, and so we have that in our shop in 4 different sizes. If you've already bought from the shop this year, thank you so much. If you haven't gotten yours yet, they are coming. They are on the way. Let's get on with the topic of today's video, which is, what do you do all day? That is the most common question I get quite a lot, and I know a lot of you guys get it because I get messages and comments about it as well. So I do think it is a common response that people will say to us, and I really do feel like learning to accept it. That is our lot in life. When we choose this lifestyle that is extremely countercultural, that people are not going to understand, and that is okay. So it's a very common question to get, and I think that anymore we should just expect it, because just by the nature alone of not working outside of the home and being a homemaker, that is very countercultural. So people are bound to not fully understand that choice or even understand the lifestyle that comes with it. And that's okay to have understanding for people just having no idea and to not be offended by it. I do want to read from 1 Corinthians 10:31, which says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." I think that's very applicable to us as homemakers too, because I feel like most of our life is revolved around putting food on the table and making sure everyone is fed nutritious meals. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, that no matter what we do, we are doing it all for the glory of God. So I can only share from my own experiences. I am nearly 6 years into being a full-time homemaker, and I've really had to learn and continue to remind myself to not take offense when I get asked this question, because I think it's genuine curiosity that people have when they ask this question. I would say most of the time, it's not actually a malicious question. It is curiosity. Like, tell me what you do all day, because people cannot imagine a life of not having to go work for someone else and someone else telling them what to do with their time, because that has been so normalized by our modern culture. It's become normalized for women to work outside of the home, work for someone else. That's just what's acceptable or normalized by society these days. So I think when you're not going the normal flow of society, it gets people questioning things or curious about things, because why aren't you doing the normal thing? Why aren't you going and working outside of the home? And what could you possibly be doing all day if you aren't going and working outside of the home? And I think this is especially true for women who are homemakers that don't yet have children, or whose children have grown out of the house. That the question even more so is, what could you possibly be doing all day? Because again, in our society, even in Christian circles, being a homemaker is equated with being a stay-at-home mom. You only become a homemaker when you have children. That is the only acceptable time to quit your job to come home, is if you have children. And then once your children move out of the house, you can go and work outside of the home again. And so a lot of the ideas of homemaking revolves around children, which is totally understandable. I mean, that should be very normalized. Praise God, we want everyone to be having children. In my case, we haven't been blessed with children yet, so it confuses people for me to be at home and not working outside of the home when we don't have children, because homemaking is being a stay-at-home mom. And again, that's understandable, because I would say that most women who do quit their jobs to come home, they did work outside of the home up until having children. So it's hard to even have understanding of a picture of what it would look like to be home without having children. And this is why in a lot of my videos on my channel, and then Scott and I, we have a channel together where we talk about a lot of these things. We try to normalize homemaking for women of any age, and to normalize homemaking as the goal for when a girl gets married, instead of going and working for someone else, that she shifts from working outside of the home to now she's married. She is now the helper of her husband, and to learn the role of being a helper to her husband and to be a keeper of her home, as what Titus 2 says, with older women teaching the younger women these things, to start normalizing that it's okay for when a wife gets married for her to leave working outside of the home and to come home and to learn the ways of being a helper and to be a keeper of the home even before children come into the picture. And we're huge proponents of children are a blessing. It's what the Bible says. Don't withhold having children. They're a blessing. God will provide. But in some cases, like our own, that doesn't happen in the timeline that we expect it to happen. And so to not put off all the other things that God has commanded us to do, but to by faith, you know what, by faith, I'm going to steward this season well, and I'm going to learn how to help my husband in the best of my ability in this season before we have children. I'm going to learn how to be a keeper of the home to my best of my ability before we have children. I'm going to try to learn systems. I'm going to try to learn as many skill sets that I can before children come into the picture, so that way when children come in, I already have so many skills in my tool belt that I know how to do that I can carry on when children come into the picture. I've had so many ladies encourage me in this season of us hoping and praying for children to learn as many skills as I possibly can in the time that I do have available to me, so that this time isn't wasted. And that's true for if you are a lady whose children has moved out of the home. There are so many skill sets, so many things at our fingertips to be able to learn within our home. I've done a whole video. It's called Homemaking and Building Your Home Economy, and I talk about all the things that we can do within our home to build our home economy, and what a blessing it is to be able to learn those things even before children come into the picture. And so when the question does come of what do you do all day, I think take this as an invitation to give a positive vision for what you do all day. You don't have to have the perfect answer every time. I know for me, afterwards I end up being critical of myself of like, oh, I should have said this, I could have said this better, I could have been more eloquent in what I was saying. And I don't even try to script out what I'm going to say, because really it's unique for the person when that question comes up of knowing who I'm talking to, of what I'm going to say. So for some people, I'm like, well, I cook everything from scratch. So I spend tons of time in my kitchen cooking stuff from scratch, which is very true. I spend a huge portion of my day making and preparing food and meals, and if it's not preparing actually physical meals, it's cleaning up meals, or it is going through sorting wheat berries, it's sprouting wheat berries, it's making tinctures for wellness, it's making salves and oils for our home apothecary, and my cleaning products, my facial products. There are an abundance of things that I'm doing just involving food and ingredients. And so I think you can get a vibe from the person that you're talking to of how interested they are. I think there's some people who just ask the question out of politeness. They don't know what else to say to you, and the easiest thing would be to ask you what your job is, and so they're just doing it out of politeness. They don't actually care. So to read the room when it's those type of people, if they don't seem genuinely interested, you don't owe them an explanation of what you do. I know for me, in those situations, I can tend to feel the awkwardness of the room, and when I feel awkward, sometimes I ramble, and then I can catch myself that I'm rambling, and I'm like, okay, I don't owe an explanation to someone who's actually not interested in what I'm saying to begin with. So then just pull back and then ask them a question about their life and turn it back to them. Because if you can tell someone's not interested, you don't need to keep explaining what your life is like. But if someone is genuinely curious and they're asking because they're curious about what you do, you can go into whatever thing you've been doing recently. You can, for me, sometimes it just depends on the time of year or what I'm doing for that season. A lot of times during the summer, It's so easy for me to talk about the things that I'm canning or finding local farms to get their produce and can them or freeze the stuff and talk about that stuff of what I'm doing. Or if it's something to do with my husband's work and what I'm doing to help him with his work. So much of our life with being homemakers is adjusting to whatever season that you're in. And I really think for moms, it is so easy to answer this question. I can only imagine how fun it could be to answer this question because your children are in a unique season of life right now. So just talk about what's going on with your kids, what things they're learning, what they're trying, what you're learning about them, and how fun it is, how exciting it is. Consider this as an opportunity to give a positive vision for being a wife, being a mom, and being a keeper of the home, because that's what our world needs. Our world needs a positive vision for the home instead of the home being just a place to come back and sleep at night. That it's not a place of productivity, it's just a place of consumption, sleep, and then everyone goes off and does their own thing during the best hours of the day, only to come back home at the end of the night and eat cereal, watch TV, and go to bed. That doesn't have to be the normal person's life, especially the normal Christian's life. Actually, home can be a really beautiful and bountiful place. So my encouragement is to get comfortable with this being a question that you will get for the rest of your life, because as Christians, we are a peculiar people. Our lifestyle is always going to be peculiar to the world, and so people are going to have questions. They're not going to fully understand the decisions that we make, and so take it as an opportunity to share a picture of what an honor it is that we get to be home. My parents made it so normal that women were homemakers. I had that picture growing up to where it was just kind of an expected thing that I thought in my mind that I would do someday, was be a full-time homemaker with my kids and help my husband, because that's the example that my mom gave me, to the point where I remember actually feeling sorry for my classmates whose moms worked outside of the home, because I felt that was abnormal. So we never know how being confident in the role that God has given us, and not being prideful, but just being confident and at rest in our role that God has given us, having that confidence, we never know how that's giving confidence to our girls of the younger generation, to encourage them that this is a good thing to aspire to. And so I hope that this encourages you as the questions come up, if not now, then when they do come up, that not to take offense, because a lot of times people just are genuinely curious because you're living counterculturally. This is a counterculture lifestyle, and questions are bound to come up with it. So take it as an opportunity to share how God has allowed you to do this and what life is like being a homemaker. And again, like I said, being able to read if someone's asking out of politeness or if someone is genuinely curious about what you do all day. So I hope that this has been a blessing to you. I bless you and the rest of your day.